Yeah, let's start with just a quick tour around why collaborative leadership is important. It can be really challenging to achieve, especially in this day and age with so many competing and complex demands. It could be that the workload in the team is uneven, or maybe there's really important details being dropped. Maybe it's unclear who's doing what on your team, or who has the authority to make which decisions. All of these can create frustration and conflict. So I want to start with a question of why collaborative leadership as a form of leadership is so important, by asking our students on this call, what helped you realize that developing your collaborative leadership was important to you? And I'll start with you, Noemi.
Thanks, Cecile. So I have, for the greater part of my career, been interested in democratic workplaces, democratic organizations, and have intellectually, logically considered them to be better for a variety of reasons, and have learned various techniques and this sort of thing, but they never really gelled into one overall approach. And so it was always a little bit catch as catch can, and led to a lot of confusion, which leads to a lot of frustration. And because I am in the position of leading an organization that works with groups that are democratic, with cooperatives, I thought it was important that we explore as fully as possible what that means by doing it ourselves within our organization. And so, getting introduced to CoLab and seeing immediate benefits in terms of the quality of our meetings and the quality of our follow-through on what we said we would do, accountability, really was immediately compelling. And sort of reading the background information of what the ideas are based on also helped put everything into a framework that I could grasp. Because usually you get a little good idea here, you get a little good idea there, and they don't fit together. And this, for me, was an overall idea that I could grasp. That said, the actual implementation, as Cecile noted, can be difficult. You can grasp the idea and still have a lot of trouble putting it into action. And this became really apparent to me. I did a bunch of employee reviews in the late spring last year. And I'd say well over half of the people I spoke to expressed a lot of difficulty with prioritization, overload, not getting to everything. And I realized that this was a problem for my organization, and that I, as a leader, struggling with the exact same problems, I was setting a tone. And that's what leaders do, whether they like it or not. And I realized that if I wanted to help my staff get a handle on their workload and be able to do the things that needed to be done, feel good about doing them, feel good about not doing the things that fell outside their priorities, that I needed to learn how to do that myself. So that coincided with my starting the leadership program in the summer. And I'm not there yet. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a journey, but I've definitely made some progress. And the leadership program and the coaching has really helped with that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Noemi. Appreciate it. How about you, Janet? How would you talk about what helped you realize that developing your collaborative leadership was important to you?
Well, it started off as a somewhat desperate need. We have some condo associations that we did the development for. We set up developed the buildings and set up the initial condo association. turned it over to the homeowners, and we have had some pretty serious problems with power imbalances, frankly. So we needed to do something pretty desperately. So this was one way that we thought we could have training and learn how to talk to folks about integrative consent, though they will, aren't necessarily on board with that when we first talk about it, or even know the term. My colleague works with the co-op, so they have signed into this, but our condo associations haven't necessarily. So it was to kind of stem the bleeding, if you will. And that has been helpful in some of the conversations. But then I realized, to take it to my workplace, I work for Champlain Housing Trust. We are a democratic organization, so we start from a really, really solid place. But we do have more than we can do. So the scopes piece was very, very helpful. But the thing about that I guess I was most surprised about is how helpful the structure of the meeting was, because we had pretty good meetings, but just to make sure that nobody's voice was lost, and to make sure we are absolutely capturing what was decided. We were still doing too much of the, now what did we say there? So that piece has been really helpful. And there's this last little piece of accountability that we've been working on, taking it full, the 100% of the way. We were maybe 90%, but there were little things, but now people are like, oh, okay, no, we made a decision. We're doing a little bit more on using what system might be good for folks to use to track their tasks. And then, how can people see it so we can hold each other a little bit more accountable as well as ourselves. The scopes piece has kind of been a lifesaver, because right now I have 2 new grants and I have more than I can do. So this is helpful not only to me, but to my team and my supervisor to say, okay, which ones can we actually do? Because we like to take on everything, and then you miss pieces, and that never feels good.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. And Rebecca, your experience.
Yeah, great. What, excuse me, what Noemi and Janet said definitely resonate with me. And part of it for me was entering Round Sky's work before I joined the program, and really getting this experience of an organization that really values structure, whereas some other organizations that I have been a part of valued really organic, go with the flow, which didn't work. So this organization that really valued structure and also building healthy, genuine relationships felt new for me. And noticing how different that felt in comparison to other places that I had worked and other teams that I'm a part of currently, I felt it was pretty necessary to work on that collaborative leadership piece for me. And also feeling pretty inadequate in handling challenges and other places in my organizing life, such as overload and not knowing who was doing what. That often happens in the collective organizations that I'm a part of. And then also fear around stepping on people's toes. So like overload and fear of taking over someone's work. So I know that this has helped me understand and start to shift things. And it definitely always need to keep honing in on what is working, what's not working. And yeah, I think those are some of the main things. And I've found that it's been helpful for me in terms of shifting the way of what leads to how I notice things that lead to burnout and how that could be changed versus, oh, well, that was just burnout. They need self-care, which isn't really the right answer, but was often a narrative in the places that I've been working in. So that's what brought me there. Short and
Nice.
sweet.
Thank you, Rebecca. Really appreciate hearing from all of you. And you've touched already on my next question a little bit, each of you in your first answer, but I'm curious, what was most powerful for you about the CLCP? How has it essentially changed your leadership so far? And I'll start with you again, Noemi.
Yeah. So one of the features of the way the CLCP is structured is that it you do a leadership assessment at the beginning, and you're asked to pick a topic that you want to work on, sort of based on your where you're at as a leader. And I've done various different things more informally, but actually thinking, okay, here's the thing I want to work on, and I've got a group to work on it with me, was different. I hadn't had that experience before, and I think there's probably different ways you can get that experience, but it's definitely a very important experience for a leader. And the idea was to structure it in such a way that you could repeat that process independently if you took it on. So my topic, I actually had two that were sort of related, was about making more organized use of my time. Did you see me looking over there? Because it's like still on my wall. So making more organized use of my time, and speaking up to express an idea that I had in meetings. So sort of seeing what I thought needed to happen and doing something about it rather than just going with the flow. So sort of recognizing that my personality is much more laid back and a little bit passive, recognizing that I needed to work to have a different approach, both for organizing my time and for my participation in meetings. So again, it's a journey. I'm on that journey, but I think it has been really helpful.
Thank you, Noemi. How about you, Janet? What's been most powerful so far for you?
Wow, there's so many big pieces, but some of what Naomi just said actually resonates pretty loudly. I tend to be more passive, and Rebecca used that phrase, being afraid of stepping on toes. Something about having a structure has normalized things for me. Like, oh, it's normal. We're just having a discussion about something. It's not anything personal. We don't have to bring excessive amounts of emotion into it. Nobody needs to be attacking each other. Not that we did much of that, but we did too much in the opposite direction. Oh, I can't mention that because they'll feel bad because they didn't finish that task. Which, crazy as it seems, I struggle with that immensely. So that was kind of a life changer for my ability to both say, hey, that's not my job, and we could clarify whose it was, and then I could also bring up, hey, because you haven't done this, this is how it affects what I do, because our positions are very interrelated.
Right. Nice. Thank you, Janet. Yeah, and how about you, Rebecca?
Definitely, again, resonating. And the thing that stands out for me is that I've noticed that's gone into other parts of my life is this different way of listening to what's happening around, like in an organization or even in relationships, about what there's this thing called tension that we say, like where you're at versus where you want to be, whether it's a positive or negative thing, which are our agenda items. And I think I've started to think about the way that people bring things up to me I don't say like what will help you move this forward to my friends or my loved ones, but I am thinking about, okay, like I'm getting better at listening and getting better at knowing what's needed, or offering different ideas of what's needed rather than wherever I was before, which I'm having trouble remembering. But it's a different way of listening, whether it's in an organizational way or a personal way, which has, I think, helped me a lot to understand what's happening around me.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential benefits that come out of the CLCP1, and they are uniquely tailored to where your growth edges are with yourself and your organizations. So I'd like to take a few minutes to just cover what is in the course, so you have a sense of that in a little more clear manner, and also some of the course logistics, and then we'll take some questions. So first of all, this course was designed with the belief that all great teams are made up of many different kinds of leaders. So in this program, you'll learn to nurture your own team's culture of accountability by naming leadership and giving people healthy power over their work. And part of this takes building up your own personal skills and adding tools to your leadership box to understand how to create generative, healthy, powerful leadership in your teams. And part of the program is also about tools for your entire team, that your whole team can learn, that really help clarify some of these stumbling blocks that are so common. So this is a remote learning program, and it's for visionaries seeking to put democratic tools to create a culture of accountability and action, to address power dynamics and hierarchies in your team that no one wants to talk about. It's hard to talk about these things. And also to build up your own leadership that's generative rather than either passive or dominating. We tend to kind of go to one extreme or the other. And so what's a balanced and generative way of using our power? So we'll first of all spend some time talking about, what is collaborative leadership, why is it important, and what does it require for us in order to enact it. So effective processes for knowing what you and your team need in any situation and how to get there. And this includes tools for facilitating productive, inclusive meetings. You've heard a bit about that so far. And the meetings also have built-in accountability mechanisms for self-organized teams. And that generally saves a lot of time. In Module 2, we also dedicate a chunk of energy to crafting a workable collaborative accountability system. You'll learn how to challenge and use openness and transparency in your team. And you're also going to integrate a project for implementing your own or upgrading your own task tracking system. And you'll set up and get feedback on a collective task tracking system for your team, which is a key to effective collaborative accountability. And we'll next dive into understanding skilled and inclusive facilitation, really through dialogue, practice, feedback. You'll build your own facilitation skills, including tools to manage difficult people, to work with power of conflict, and to communicate with clarity. You'll get some tools to guide you through how to integrate multiple perspectives while also building up your team's strength together rather than dividing into separate ideas. And you'll gain confidence to facilitate a participatory process to get clear results from your conversations. You'll also spend much of your time practicing and refining your own skills. So this is a very practical course. We want to make sure that you have time to implement and get feedback on what you're learning. So we spend time working out the nitty-gritty details through practicing, facilitating, and integrating the shared tracking systems we offer you, honing in on skills and lingering questions to facilitate fun and productive meetings, and ways of managing unhealthy power dynamics in the moment. And we'll also spend some time integrating and completing and helping you move forward so you leave with a clear plan to keep yourself accountable and embody and remember these new skills when you need them. So on that note, just a few highlights of what you can expect to get out of this program. And I'll pass it to you, Rebecca.
Great. I'll just be pretty brief here. but these are some of the main goals of the program. And the one that I think really speaks the most to me is the intentional and grounded leadership, which may have not spoken as much to me before I took the program, but it now does. And that what really comes out for me there is we have this somatic, this awareness of your body project throughout the whole program, where you choose a daily practice of really it's not only thinking, it's also feeling and connecting. That is something that I wasn't super diligent about during the program, which Noemi and Cecile can speak to, but I've noticed that I do it often on a daily basis now, that I'm noticing that, and I'm feeling more grounded throughout the day when things don't go the way I want them to, or something awful happens. So that feels pretty, or in a meeting where I'm like, oh, that's not what I wanted to happen there. So that's something that really sticks out to me. And the other things that we touch on are collective decision making, how to really have a decision that the whole team consents on. Not everyone likes it, but you get somewhere new and you're able to keep moving forward. And facilitating productive meetings, which has been talked about at length here, and accountability. And also I've talked earlier about how these skills just seep into all of my interactions, almost in a good way. So
yeah, thanks Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take just a couple minutes to look at what's included in this, because there's a number of components. First of all, an instruction manual and card deck, which specify the processes that you're learning. So you have a visual reference for what are the steps that you can return to at any time when you're refreshing your mind about, say, how do we run a strategy process. You'll also get access to Collab 101, which is our online course platform. You'll be participating in weekly training calls with a certified instructor to get instruction and support with your facilitation, and support with implementation in your team. You'll also have connection and learning within a community of mission-driven leaders like yourself through this small, especially designed cohort to deepen your learning and engagement of collaborative practices. You'll also get personalized feedback, and you'll receive practical templates in how to build responsive, dynamic, collaborative teams, and the access to the online course platform and forums where you can discuss your team's current challenges, receive feedback and support from your other participants in your cohort. And you'll be getting a certification as a Collab Level 1 facilitator to add to your resume, supporting your work as a professional. So those are some of the things that's included. If you want more detail, please go to roundskysolutions.com /CLCP1 for more information, also to apply. And just briefly, let me touch on course logistics in case any of your questions are really about, well, how does this work? The first thing is that it runs in small cohorts of 3 to 5 people for 10 weeks, and we meet online via a video conferencing platform for 2 hours a week. In addition to this instruction time, during these calls, you'll have opportunity to facilitate and receive coaching and personalized feedback. In between each session, you'll have the course platform to interact with, where you can access the homework that we've designed to help you put what you're learning into practice. And the rigorous certification exam enables you to demonstrate your integration of all the key modules. So we're launching our winter cohort the week of February 19th. And the simple application deadline is January 31st, so that's coming up next week. The cost in total is $2,500. We do accept payment plans, and if you're a Vermont resident, you may also qualify for some VSAC funding, so please reach out. We can get you all the details on that. And we also have a referral policy that puts 20% of the paid tuition from anyone you refer to us towards your course fees. So we're committed to making this work for you. We don't want money to be an obstacle. So on that note, let's open it up and hear from you all what other questions you might have. What are some of the common questions we've heard? We might pull some of those in.
Perhaps we can start with Jennifer's question of
Great.
If you're
Yeah.
the first person in a team, how does that work out? Was that your question?
Yeah, Jennifer, if you want to repeat your question, I'd love to hear it again.
Yeah, that is my question. You know, if I am the first person, or perhaps the only person that would be doing the training, I'm curious about how I might bring that to the organization, if that would be useful. That's really my question, or if it might be more useful to try to get more people on board first.
Yeah, it's a great question. The short answer is that it really only takes one person to implement these tools. And so your learning absolutely can transfer to your team and your organization. Because they are such practical and relatively easy to use tools, spreading that knowledge in your organization is relatively easy. So what I do recommend, though, is that you pick one team to start with. Because that will help you sort of hone your skills and get better and better at how to lead other people through these processes, because you become not just the practicer of the processes, but the teacher as well. And that's a challenging role to play, but it's totally doable, and you know, can make a huge difference in terms of how even just one team in the organization operates. And then over time, as people see those benefits, it generally spreads further and further in the organization. So yes, I would say you absolutely, as a single person, can learn this material and bring it to your organization.
And I'll add to that I think the really beneficial thing about CLCP 1 is that you have a cohort to come back to. If no one else in your team, like maybe you mentioned this program and no one else in your team sees what you see and you decide to do it anyway, the real benefit is having the people in your cohort to troubleshoot things with, like, oh, I tried to do this, but this went this way. And then you still have a community, because it can be pretty lonely to be the only person that wants a democratic workplace, right? That's from what I heard earlier. It seems like you're the one pushing for that.
We actually have a very democratic workplace right now, but we might actually be transitioning to a more hierarchical one, which is very, which is a little bittersweet. But so it's almost like, how can we maintain, or maybe, you know, firm up some of the skills that we've needed to be able to function in this way, in this more collaborative way, even if we are shifting our business model.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point you bring up, Jennifer. CoLab has essentially looked at, you know, what is it about hierarchical operation that is important? So what are the pieces of hierarchy that are useful to us? Things like having clear roles, and has synthesized that into how CoLab operates. So essentially we're getting the best of both horizontal and hierarchical ways of leading and operating together, which I'm guessing is going to provide, you know, given your instance and the little bit that I know about it, it sounds like you've gone a little too far to the horizontal extreme and are dealing with some repercussions of that, and are trying to reintegrate, perhaps, hopefully, the best parts of a hierarchical system. The question is, are those really the best parts to integrate? What other pieces might you all not be seeing, just because each individual, you know, can't see everything? So that's where I think you might find CoLab really helpful, in terms of giving you those guideposts to say, oh, this particular part is truly valuable about how to operate together. And I'm curious, Janet and Noemi, you both in some extent have played the role that Jennifer's talking about and are doing that currently. Is there anything you want to add to what that experience is like?
Well, I have the advantage of being the executive director in my organization, so it's a easier place to be introducing new things. Not necessarily a slam dunk. You know, people do need to be brought along, but I mean, it's interesting the way you arranged the benefits, and the better meetings was like the last one, but in my experience, that's like the first one. You know, when people experience better meetings, they're like, oh, that was better, you know. and that's like a good hook, and it's the easiest thing you can do, because you can like not change anything else, but just have a better meeting, and then you're making better decisions, and those decisions are recorded better, and like, oh, we know this now, we don't have to like keep going back. So so I think that's it's a nice entryway to just start having better meetings, and then your meetings will start to raise the questions that get answered then by, oh, well, we actually need a better system for that, or we need more clarity on who does what. And then you're like, why don't we do it this way? And so, I think it sort of builds on itself. Yeah, that's, I think, what my experience has been and what makes sense to me.
Thanks, Noemi. Anything you'd like to add, Janet?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, neither Julia nor I are actually using this within our own organization. We're using it with our customers.
Nice.
So we're definitely in that boat. Right now, I think our biggest issue is around clarifying who does what and accountability in my small team within my department. So trying to shore this up for myself, people have noticed that I am more organized now. Nice. So then they ask, well, hey, what are you, I noticed that, you seem more organized, and that has bred some discussions, which is nice, and has led to, we have a meeting planned to go a little deeper on defining some of these things. We've had some changes. I also found, well, this has struck me, you can take one little piece. So the objection round, one meeting I was like, oh, I need to bring this up now. Sometimes we talk about things and people want to bring up every thought they have when we're just trying to make a decision, and it may be, I just need to talk about this history because there was this big long history, I've been here 17 years, or this person just kind of complains, and we're just trying to make a decision. So to say, hey, it is possible to say, instead of, do you agree with this, do you have any objections? We've been trying this in the cohort, and can we try it? That was phenomenal. That really made a difference. Oh, I don't have to agree. And that concept that we can try a thing. Can we try this thing? Because as a department, we're, 16 people, and we never agree perfectly, but we don't have to agree perfectly. So you find you're in a meeting, you've tried this out, and you realize, oh, they don't have to know all the jargon. They don't have to know the structure of the meetings for me to be able to pick up one little tiny, super practical piece. They got enough, we could use it, and it was wonderful.
That's awesome. What a great example. Thanks, Janet. Yeah.
Great. What do people have other questions that they'd like to bring up about the program, logistics, something we said? Okay, there are some common questions that people have that I can bring up if this might be helpful for folks. We have a few minutes left, so if something does come up and you don't want to forget it, feel free to put it in the chat box. But another question that comes up is, what if I'm not a part of any teams? Like, what collab is really, you hear a lot of team language, so what if I'm not a part of any teams? Cecile, would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So because CoLab is so practical, and it's best learned through applying it, putting it into action, seeing what happens, learning from what happens, having an environment where you can practice the skills that you're learning is important. However, I would encourage someone who doesn't think they're part of a team to think again, because we often rule things like our home environment out. we don't think of that as a team. That is a team. It's a very, very important team. It's an incredibly foundational team. And so whether you're living in a, small ad hoc, community of young 20-somethings, or you're, got a family and you're, living in a home with your partner and a few kids, those are teams that you can take these tools to and apply. The other place that you could expand your thinking about what a team is any volunteer activities that you're part of. Are you part of a church or a synagogue or some other spiritual community of practice that, again, there is work to be done. And so how we do that work is really where collab comes into play. So that is what I would say about it. It's entirely possible to apply these tools in a wide variety of places, not just the place where you're earning your income.
Great, thank you. And we have a minute left. If does anyone have any other questions that they want to get in before we wrap this up? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Like we said earlier, if you want to be a part of the next cohort, it starts February 19th, the week of February 19th. And the applications are due on the 31st. And it's fairly simple. Shouldn't take you long. And we'd love to have any and all of you to join us.
Thanks so much for coming, everyone. And thanks for your interest in collaborative leadership. It's very important for our world. And so thank you for your time and interest in it.